but to really give you my concept of what is really involved in the curriculum of what we're developing. I'm actually in 4 schools because I think that's what we have to put together. The School of Medicine, which focuses on the clinical, the physicians involved with this. The School of Nursing, that are important clinicians, components of that. But biomedical engineering, which is where a lot of the technology comes from. And then the School of Business, which it really is the enablement of much of what we're doing. So all of that really is part of what we're going to do. What I'd really like to talk about is some of the, and quickly, the formalities of education, what we're talking about. And then I want to tell you a program that we're involved with at Duke that I think is a little bit different for that. And finally, I want to close with what I think what we have to do. Part of what I would say is the old way of teaching has to leave. We have new things to teach, new reasons for doing so, and that's the big changes that have to take place. So I grew up in a period in which I actually went to school at Duke, and the classic was the professor that walks up, blows the dust off of the lecture note, and continues to lecture on notes that were probably written 10 to 15 years ago. That completely has to change. One of the things we need to recognize is the students are infinitely smarter now than they were a few years ago. Most of the students know more than I knew when I finished my PhD. So that's the environment that we're teaching, and it's a mixture. So I think it's a challenge for the teachers to change what they're doing. You can't depend on what you knew 2 years ago even. I think the world is changing that fast and you have to stay. But it's a diverse set of skills that we really are talking about for a lot of reasons. We need some new approaches, and I'll talk about. And part of the challenge is to identify who needs to know what and what's the best way of teaching that material. And I'll end up talking about that a little bit. So this is coming from the American Medical Informatics Board. Over the last many years, AMIA has tried to define what the requirements are for teaching medical informatics. In fact, we have struggled over the years to know what to call it, what we're doing, whether it's health informatics, clinical informatics, medical informatics. I got up to 41 adjectives to the word informatics. And finally, I put a big X and says it's informatics. I thought I'd solve the problem, but then I discovered there's something new called data science. So over the years, I've changed what I've called myself, largely driven by who is willing to give me money under what label. So it's important to recognize that it's what we do, not what we call ourselves in the process of doing that. Now, I'm not going to go over all of these, but I thought this was interesting. These are the fundamental scientific skills that AMIA, after multiple iterations of this, came up with. And the first one is the professional perspectives of understanding that I'm taking a lot of different people and put them together. They have to be able to talk to each other. And I started out, I had a slide talking about my whole career. My degree is in electrical engineering, which I think is the best background for anything that we're doing in informatics. But from there, I went a postdoc to medical school, and then I started doing things. But I continue to learn. I actually spend as much time as my students in learning new material. And one of the things that I discovered is the first thing I have to learn is the vocabulary, is the words that's used in a new discipline. And again, I think that's important. You can't learn if it's a foreign language to what you're understanding. So learning the language is the number one of what we're doing. But analyze problems. If you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, you'll never know when you've solved it. And the number of people that are working on things, and I ask what problem you're trying to solve, and they don't know the answer to that question. So there's part of what we have to do is to teach people how to approach the issues of what they're trying to solve. I'm going to skip down to the word innovate. We struggle to understand how to do things differently. Almost everything that we do, we start with what is, and we try to move from there into the solution itself. Gets back to defining the problem. If we understand the problem, then we have a much better feel for what a solution of that problem would be. And we are open to more vision and more innovation in the process of doing all of that. The categories of competence, I think, is very interesting because I think these are some basic kind of things that go beyond what we have gone in all of the years past. I might mention also that next year I will have celebrated 50 years within my department as a faculty member. But in those early years, I enjoyed your history because I'm a young kid sitting there listening to some of the people that you really talked about. I learned a great deal from Europe because I really think that in many ways you were the leaders in the field of informatics and what we should do and how to do it. So I really appreciated the opportunity of learning from you and Europe in doing that. But the things that we need to know is something about the scope and breadth of the discipline. And what's changed is I've got the word molecules, basic science, to individuals, to population, to global. And we move across that spectrum, but not quickly. And not consistently back and forth on that. We need to know the theory and the methodology. I need to know how to do what I want to do. And I think programming languages has been of real interest to me over the years, starting with Fortran and COBOL, the basics, thinking that, geez, what do you need any other languages? And now I think over the years I've learned like 15 languages, including the fact that I wrote my own languages somewhere along the way. So that's an important part. The technological approaches, communications, information science, computers, but more importantly now, the new thing that we're having to deal with is human and social context, and we need to introduce those into what we're talking about. Within a domain, there are specific skills that we need to understand within that. There's fundamental knowledge in each of the domains. There's procedural knowledge and skills, and our curriculum has to reflect that in terms of what we're teaching. So the environments for learning is very different. Whenever the first time I saw computerized learning, e-learning if you will, it simply was a paper textbook in which I flipped pages electronically. Zero value in that, in my opinion, over doing it with a piece of paper. Now, e-learning is totally different. We can enable such a different way of understanding. I can put dynamics into this. I can bring all sorts of scenarios and demonstrations and all of that within the environment itself. I can ask quizzes. So there's a great deal I can do in that approach. But the things that we're doing at Duke, we have some traditional classroom settings, and I think there's a time and place for that. We have night classes because we're engaging people that are changing, that are still working and taking classes at the same time. We have weekend classes. We do distance learning, and we played with virtual reality as a way of distance learning. And just a little side effect there is I taught a course with virtual reality, and the first thing I did was to create an avatar. 23 years old, dark black hair, sexy clothes, and then the students came and they didn't know me. So I quickly changed to a digital image of my face, found out that the designers of the avatar didn't know the difference between white and gray, so I had to introduce white hair for doing all of that. But that reality of me is very important in using virtual reality because it quickly is not it, but it's me. And so those are the differences. But I can put you in all sorts of experience. And 80% of training of pilots of the commercial airlines is done in simulation. And while we don't use that for training surgeons and other people, we need to really move in that direction. And that is part of the curriculum that we're doing too. The 10 by 10 program has already been mentioned at a number of universities. And what's behind this is a bit of the best of the best. Duke is, for example, teaching a course in data standards because it's an area that we spend a good deal of time. The Office of the National Coordinator now has funded the development of a full curriculum. I think it's like 20 courses that are available for free. And again, they're not perfect, but it's a beautiful resource of pulling that down, changing it to fit your own environment, and using that. And then the Coursera and medX. Now one of the challenges of e-learning, distance learning, is I don't have the rigidity of the discipline of going to class. I have started 5 Coursera courses. I have finished 0 Coursera courses. The world catches up with me. So how you maintain that discipline without some type of connectivity, I think is one of the challenges for doing all of that. So at Duke, informatics is taught a number of different ways. Medical students can opt for a rotation in informatics. A few do, an increasing number do, but it's not a required part of that, and I firmly think it ought to be. The residents and interns can opt for a semester of learning health systems that's reasonably popular. And again, it's really an introduction to informatics. Computational biology has a program. Biostatistics and biomedical informatics has a program. Clinical research program training. School of Nursing has a program. And community and family medicine has a program. So it's spread out across the institution. There are some courses that are taught on the university side away from the School of Medicine. So we really haven't put all of that together. But I want to spend a couple of minutes now talking about one of the courses that I'm involved with too. And this is called the Master of Management Clinical Informatics. The idea here is a number of people have reached the midpoint of their career or just beyond that. And they're ready for something new and something different, and they're ready to change. So what we did was to design a course, a program that would help them transition their career to something new. You'll see a little bit of the curriculum, but it's a one-year course that's taught on weekends, on a Friday and a Saturday, every other week for a year, including a practicum. And half the courses are business and half the courses are informatics. And so this is the makeup of this. And again, I think the reason I'm doing this is to give you some idea of, if you look at the bottom section over here, you'll see that we have a lot of clinicians and scientists in the program. It's usually the dominant part of these. And in 2016, we had 30 students. Average age is 41. I used to think that was old. Now I think it's young. Average work experience is 14 years, and 16 of these were associated with Duke. So we have MDs at Duke that are taking this program subsidized by their own departments in many cases to give them that background. So we've had a consultant, we've had some general management, we have some people from IT and engineering, operations. We had one professor that actually took a year off to take the course itself, research and development and other groups that come from around the world in this program, and it's an opportunity of working together. So these are the courses that we teach. I'm not going to leave these here for a long period of time, but because the white ones are the business courses, the blue ones are the informatics courses, and the business courses, the case studies that are our part of the business courses come out of the health industry. So this gives you an opportunity. The bad part about this is a number of these people come out of this and become consultants. I always thought you needed a little bit more experience perhaps to be a consultant, but they've done very well. At Duke, they've done very well because they become the informatics expert in their clinical department. So I think it's a very effective program, different than most other programs I've seen, but it works. So what I want to finish up with is what I think the future is, and this is something I'm trying to put together at Duke. First of all, we teach in semesters or quarters. This program I talked about is taught in quarters. It's an artificial set of time for teaching something. And I always said if I'm teaching a semester course, a third of it I know so much because it's part of my everyday life, I don't need to be prepared. I walk in and start talking. A third of it, I go back and look at my notes from last year, adjust it a little bit, and I'm able to do that. A third of it, I have to study as hard as the students before I know what I'm going to teach. So I'm not really the expert at everything I'm going to teach in a full semester. So what I really want to do is to put something together again where I have an expert. I want to get the topics taught by the people who can do it as part of their everyday life and part of their everyday work. That's part of what I'm doing. The students that we have range from the theoretical informaticians, the snobs of informatics, if you will, the academicians, a bad word in many places, all the way down to the people that are actually running the computers, the IT people, the CIOs, and everybody else. That's the spectrum that we're talking about. And then you add that to some of the basic scientists. You add to that the people that are doing clinical research, the people that are doing clinics and now population health and those sorts of things. A huge spectrum of people. So part of what they need to do is to learn how to manage a research project, how to step through the hoops that are necessary necessary to get approval, consent, and all those sorts of things for doing all of that. I have professionals, I have MDs, I have PhDs, but I also have staff level people that are doing this and putting all of that together. And the teachers themselves with varying levels of knowledge. What's required changes over time, and I can't tell you when I start what I'm going to need to know when I finish. So over the 50 years, I keep throwing away facts that I've learned as part of my education, and I keep acquiring new facts. So that's the key to success. That's what we have to do. And just-in-time learning is what this is all about. So what I'm proposing is that instead of a quarter or a semester, we create a mosaic of skills or topics, knowledge and experience that we really need. We put together this program, and I take the best person that I can get my hands on, whether at Duke or UNC or North Carolina State or the Triangle itself, and say, I want somebody to teach a course in natural language processing. How long would it take you to teach that course? You could do it in 6 weeks. Okay. Put you down for 6 weeks. I can do it in 2 weeks. Okay, I'll put you down for 2 weeks. Another topic. So I'm ask the experts how long it will take you to teach that and create a mosaic of all of these courses. Each course is taught by the best available expert. The length of the course is as long as it takes. And then I require an overview set. So those 4 topics that I mentioned coming out of the AMIA, everybody has to take some look at that, something in the theory, something in the business, etc. So you get some feel of what the scope of that is, and that's a fundamental requirement. Everything else is pick and choose as a consequence of what you're going to do. You can stop at any point. We'll give you a certificate, we'll give you a master's degree, or we'll give you a PhD. And another important component of this is I get you to identify your practicum, your thesis, or your dissertation as soon as possible. So if I'm going into a classroom and somebody's telling me an awful lot of facts, I have difficulty remembering any of that because I have no hooks to hang it on. So I need, if I'm working on a problem and suddenly I'm stuck with something to solve and I take that, all of a sudden it's easier for me to learn and understand what's being taught because I'm going to apply it immediately. So to me, this is exactly what we're talking about. And I'm able to tailor a set of these topics for individuals depending on what they want to do. But I let you come back after you're out in the field. All of a sudden, I'm working in the field. I discover that I need to know something. I can enroll in one of these topics, finish that material, and go back and do that. So it's a continuous process of what we're doing. So I think this is what has got to be the way of teaching it. It's got to be completely out of what we're talking about. So it's fun. It's going to be tomorrow. Thank you very much.